A stray dog found near the Texas border leads a lone deputy into a world darker than he imagined. This is not just a rescue story, it's the unraveling of a secret military program that created soldiers out of loyal dogs by erasing their memories. When Marcus Hale discovers Bishop, a scarred Malinois with a past he can't remember, he uncovers a truth meant to stay buried. But some memories don't die, and some dogs never stop protecting. What begins as compassion becomes a mission for justice, for healing, and for a promise no soldier, human or canine, should face alone. In the barren stretch of desert along the Texas-Mexico border, where the sun burns down with unrelenting fury and silence hangs like a loaded weapon, Deputy Marcus Hale drove alone along a forgotten dirt road. Dust curled behind his cruiser, mingling with memories he hadn't asked to revisit. 4 years back from a combat deployment that left more ghosts than medals, Marcus had traded the battlefield for a quiet sheriff's department in El Paso County. But quiet didn't mean peace. Not here. Not for him. It was supposed to be a routine call. A rancher had reported seeing movement near the abandoned checkpoint outside Sierra Blanca. No footprints, just strange digging patterns and barking that kept starting and stopping. No one cared about barking dogs out here, but something about the rancher's voice had unsettled Marcus. He couldn't explain it. He just felt pulled. When he reached the site, he killed the engine and stepped out into the sweltering silence. Scrub grass and brittle fences surrounded the area. The old checkpoint building stood crooked, half swallowed by drifting sand. Something flickered in the corner of his eye. Movement. Low to the ground. Silent. Calculated. Then he saw it. A dog. At first glance, it looked like just another stray thin, with a dust-coated coat the color of burnt amber. But then Marcus noticed the stance. Rigid, alert. Not aggressive, but ready. And the eyes, those eyes. They weren't feral. They weren't wild. They were trained. Marcus crouched slowly, one hand instinctively hovering near his holster but not touching it. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "You alone out here?" The dog didn't flinch. He didn't run. He just stared. Marcus recognized the breed instantly, a Belgian Malinois. Military grade. Either K9 or Border Patrol. And the scars along the dog's legs, the patch of missing fur on its flank, they weren't from desert scavenging. They were old. Surgical. A faint metal glint caught Marcus's eye, half buried in the sand near the dog's front paws. The dog stood over it, protective. Marcus stepped forward and the animal stiffened. "It's okay," Marcus murmured. "I'm not here to take anything. Just want to see what you're hiding." He knelt slowly, keeping his movements minimal. The closer he got, the clearer it became. The object in the dirt wasn't a bone or trash. It was a piece of military equipment. An encrypted data chip, burned on one edge like it had been half melted in an explosion. "What the hell?" he whispered. The dog growled low, not hostile, but warning. Marcus backed up slightly, raising both hands. "Okay, got it, yours." Then the unexpected happened. The dog picked up the data chip in his jaws and walked toward Marcus, slowly, deliberately, and dropped it at his boots. Then he sat. For a long moment, Marcus didn't move. He bent down, picked up the chip, and looked into the dog's eyes. "You're not just a stray," he said softly. "You're a soldier." The dog said nothing, of course, but he didn't need to. When Marcus turned to leave, the dog followed him. Later that night, in the small, dim living room of his ranch house, Marcus stared at the chip lying on his coffee table. The dog, now asleep on a folded blanket near the fireplace, hadn't left his side since they'd returned. No collar, no tags, just the burn scars, the discipline, and a choice to trust him. Marcus didn't know yet that this dog had once belonged to a covert operations unit that no longer officially existed. He didn't know that inside the chip were logs that could bring down one of the most secretive paramilitary programs ever sanctioned on U.S. soil. All he knew was what he'd seen in that dog's eyes. Loneliness. Purpose. A story buried in the desert, clawing to the surface. And that this was just the beginning. The next morning, Marcus Hale sat at his kitchen table, the chip lying between his calloused fingers like a loaded secret. He hadn't slept. Not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the dog curled in sleep but flinching in his dreams, legs twitching, jaw clenched. The same signs Marcus had seen in soldiers fresh off the battlefield. The dog had trauma, that much was certain. And now so did he. The chip wasn't standard military. Marcus had handled enough encrypted tech during his time in recon to know that. This wasn't issued equipment, it was custom. Civilian engineered, high-end, and damaged in a way that felt intentional, like someone had tried to melt it just enough to keep it from talking. But something had survived. He drove into El Paso before dawn, stopping at a quiet auto repair shop where his old buddy Joel worked weekends under the table. Joel used to handle drone surveillance in Afghanistan and still had some of his toys, the kind of toys that read signals in broken things. "You sure this is a good idea?" Joel asked, frowning at the chip as it loaded onto his cracked laptop. "You showing up here with military tech and a haunted dog? That screams federal heat, man." "Just read it," Marcus muttered. "Tell me if it's junk." The loading bar crawled forward. They waited in silence until Joel leaned forward suddenly. "Who? What? It's a nav tracker. Burned, yeah, but it's pinging one coordinate that repeats." Joel zoomed in. The map loaded slowly, revealing a stretch of desert just outside Marfa. Empty. Unclaimed. But then the coordinates snapped into focus: an old decommissioned training range, sealed off 5 years ago after a containment breach. "I know this place," Marcus whispered. "They said it was a munitions dump that went sideways, but there were rumors. Black sites. Off-the-books trials." Joel looked at him. "Whatever this dog was part of, I think it was buried for a reason." Back at the house, the dog paced the kitchen floor, alert, as if sensing the shift. Marcus walked in and dropped the chip on the table. "You brought this to me," he said, his voice low. "You want me to see whatever's out there." The dog stopped pacing and looked straight at Marcus. Not blinking. Not moving. "Guess we're in this together, huh?" Marcus sighed. "You got a name?" The dog tilted his head. "Right, of course you don't. Let's fix that." Marcus sat down and scribbled a name on a yellow sticky note. "Bishop. You carried something sacred, didn't you?" he said aloud. "Something someone didn't want found." That night, the local vet, Dr. Helena Ruiz, arrived under the guise of a welfare check. She was ex-Army, tough, quiet, trusted. Marcus had called her, not with the full story, but enough. She took one look at Bishop and went still. "This dog's been under restraint," she said, running her hands gently over Bishop's back. "See these scars? Not from field work. Electromuscle conditioning, pain reinforcement." "Illegal?" Marcus asked. "Off the books illegal," Helena said. "You won't find this in any handler manual. This is enhanced obedience training. Something rogue." She found a microchip near Bishop's right shoulder, intact but locked. "Encrypted. Deep level. Can we read it?" "Maybe. But if this dog was in a ghost program, it won't trace back clean." Marcus leaned against the counter, staring at Bishop. "They tried to break you." The dog didn't react. But he stayed near, closer than yesterday, still silent, but no longer just surviving. That night, Marcus loaded his rifle. The next morning, they would drive to the coordinates. But neither he nor Bishop knew that something or someone had already noticed the chip's signal had been activated. And that far out in the desert, the ghosts of the past were not ready to be unearthed. The sun rose over the vast emptiness beyond Marfa like a slow exhale, casting long amber rays across the scrubland. Marcus's truck rumbled down the forgotten access road, tires crunching over gravel and bone-dry earth. Beside him, Bishop stood in the passenger seat, not sitting, not relaxed, but alert, eyes fixed on the horizon as if he remembered this path better than Marcus ever could. They reached the chain-link gate by mid-morning. It was half-collapsed, sun-bleached, the restricted access, federal property sign barely legible under layers of dust. But the air here felt wrong, too still, too rehearsed. Like a stage left untouched since the last act ended in chaos. Marcus stepped out first. Bishop followed, ears twitching, paws silent on the gravel. He moved like a soldier returning to the battlefield, calculated, measured. No hesitation, just memory. Beyond the fence, the landscape opened into an expanse of concrete pads and metal storage sheds, remnants of a base that had been erased from maps years ago. Some of the buildings had collapsed. Others stood half open, shadows pooling inside like secrets waiting to whisper. They moved carefully through the ruins, Bishop occasionally sniffing the ground, then pausing as if remembering. Marcus followed his lead. The tracker chip had pointed to a specific building, Warehouse 4. It was still standing. The steel door creaked open under Marcus's push. Dust motes swirled in shafts of sun cutting through the broken ceiling. The air smelled of oil, rust, and something else burned plastic and antiseptic, the kind of scent Marcus hadn't smelled since Afghanistan. Bishop froze at the threshold. His body went rigid, tail straight, hackles raised. Then he stepped inside. Slowly, deliberately. As if each inch of the floor still carried ghosts only he could hear. Inside, rows of kennels lined the far wall. Rusted, torn open. Some had names spray painted on them: Bravo, Kilo, Tango 6. The names were crossed out with red. Marcus's breath caught in his throat when he saw the chalk markings on the opposite wall. Dozens of tally marks. Like someone or something had been counting days, or lives. In the center of the room lay a collapsed metal table, scorched on one end. A large blood stain still darkened the concrete beneath it. Bishop stepped forward slowly, nose twitching. Then he whined a sound Marcus hadn't heard from him before. Not a warning, not aggression. Pain. And memory. "This is where it happened, isn't it?" Marcus whispered. He knelt beside the table. On its underside, hidden from view, someone had scratched something in deep, jagged lines. M9 Echo, do not comply. Marcus stood slowly. His hands shook not from fear, but from rage. That's when he heard it. A click. Soft, subtle. Not from inside, but just outside the warehouse. Bishop growled. Marcus spun, stepping into the doorway just in time to see the figure. A man in desert fatigues, tall, clean-shaven, civilian but not ordinary, eyes cold, posture military, and holding a suppressed pistol at his side like it was part of his arm. "Step away from the dog," the man said evenly. Marcus didn't move. "Who are you?" "You don't want to know?" "That chip belongs to him," Marcus said. "And whatever happened here was authorized," the man cut in. "Classified, contained, and forgotten. You walking back out of here in one piece depends on you letting it stay that way." Bishop stood between Marcus and the stranger, his growl low and constant. He didn't lunge. He didn't bark. He just stared. The man's finger twitched. Marcus's voice dropped. "You pull that trigger, and he won't be the only one coming for you." A tense silence. Then the man smirked. "Noted." He stepped back into the shadow and vanished, no footsteps, no sound. A ghost slipping back into a system that had trained him to disappear. Marcus lowered his rifle but didn't relax. "Looks like we stirred something real," he said, glancing down at Bishop. The dog was still watching the warehouse entrance, unmoving. "We need to get out of here. Now." They exited the compound as the sun began to climb higher, baking the secrets behind them. Marcus didn't look back. Bishop did. They didn't know yet that the name scratched into that table, M9 Echo, was once the call sign of a classified program designed to turn dogs into weapons beyond conscience. And that Bishop wasn't the only survivor. He was just the first to come home. Marcus didn't speak for the first hour of the drive back. The desert rolled by outside like a fever dream, the sun carving harsh shadows across Bishop's face as he lay curled in the passenger seat. He wasn't sleeping, he was watching. Always watching. The warehouse hadn't been just a place. It had been a scar. And something had shifted inside Bishop after returning there. His silence now was heavier. Measured. Like he had remembered more than Marcus could ever guess, and was choosing to carry it alone. Back at the ranch, Marcus pulled the truck into the barn instead of the driveway. Old instinct. He didn't like being visible anymore. He checked the trail cams mounted on the perimeter posts, nothing unusual. But he added 2 more on the south fence line, then buried a third near the mailbox, its lens just peeking above the dirt. Inside the house, Helena Ruiz sat at the kitchen table, flipping through printouts from the chip. She looked up as Marcus entered, her expression tight. "You were right," she said. That building wasn't just a holding site. It was a testing ground. She pushed a photo across the table. A black and white surveillance image of a dog Bishop strapped to a metal rig, wires running into his head and neck. Neural stress response testing, she said. They were trying to trigger behavioral compliance through stimulation of the fear centers in the brain. Training through pain, Marcus muttered, jaw clenched. Helena nodded grimly. But he didn't break. He dissociated. That's why he's still alive. Marcus turned to look at Bishop, who had settled near the back door. He wasn't looking at either of them. He was staring through the screen, watching the field sway in the wind. He remembers all of it, Marcus said quietly. I saw it in there. He knew that place. Helena's voice dropped. The files reference something called Protocol 11. No official record, but the notes mention induced isolation. What does that mean? Removing all social contact, starvation, light deprivation, even exposure to sounds of other dogs in distress. They wanted to break empathy, create compliance. Marcus's knuckles whitened on the table edge. He wasn't just a dog in a program. He was a blueprint. Helena hesitated, then pulled out one final photo. This one showed Bishop not alone, but with another dog slightly larger, darker coat, same restrained posture, same scars. This one isn't tagged as deceased, she said. Last logged 5 months ago. Transferred to a different facility. Marcus stared at the photo. He's not the only one. That night, Marcus sat on the porch, rifle across his lap. Bishop lay beside him, his breathing slow but alert. The stars above stretched like watchful eyes over the hills. Somewhere out there, someone had let monsters loose in cages shaped like dogs. Someone had trained them to forget who they were. But Bishop hadn't forgotten. At 2:07 a.m., one of the trail cams pinged. South fence line. Movement. Humanoid. Walking fast. Then stopping. Marcus checked the feed. Grainy, shadowy. But real. Someone was watching the house. He grabbed his rifle, eased off the porch, and circled around through the tall grass. Bishop followed, silent as breath. They reached the perimeter in 5 minutes. Then they saw it. Not a person. A drone. Black, unmarked, hovering just above the treetops. It backed away the moment Marcus raised his scope, vanishing into the hills like a predator that had learned its prey could bite. Back inside, Bishop remained on alert, sitting at the window, eyes fixed on the horizon. They're tracking him, Helena said when Marcus told her. They're not after you. Not yet, but if they think you can unlock what's in him. They'll come, Marcus finished. Like they did at the warehouse. He sat heavily in the chair, rubbing his face. This isn't about one dog anymore, he said. It's about what they created and what they're afraid he still remembers. Helena glanced at Bishop. Then we need to find the others. Bishop finally turned his gaze to Marcus. It was the same look he'd given him in the desert. Not pleading. Permission. 3 days passed. Quiet ones. Too quiet. Marcus didn't trust peace anymore. Not after the drone. Not after the man in the warehouse. He could feel it in the air like static before lightning. Something was building. Helena stayed at the ranch, claiming she was monitoring Bishop's recovery, but Marcus knew better. She was watching his six. The house had become a forward outpost, and they were waiting for what? None of them fully knew. But Bishop knew. He'd taken to sleeping by the front door, ears twitching at every creak. During the day, he would walk the perimeter alone, tracing invisible routes with surgical precision. Marcus had tried to follow once, but Bishop had doubled back, placing himself between Marcus and the tree lane. No, Marcus had whispered, reading the dog's body language like a map. This is your route, your watch. On the 4th day, a package arrived. No return address, just a small black box dropped in the mailbox without triggering any cameras. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a flash drive. Helena scanned it on an isolated laptop. No viruses. Just one folder labeled Mem11 Cole. The file opened to reveal a series of surveillance videos, body cam footage, training logs, and a roster list. At the center, another dog. Same breed as Bishop. Same build. But this one was different. sharper, more mechanical, like someone had pushed past the point of fear and sculpted something colder, something obedient without question. His name was Cole. The last footage showed him in a blacked-out facility, no date, no location, standing next to a man in civilian tactical gear. The handler's voice was heard clearly through the static. He doesn't pause, doesn't question. He's the prototype we were always chasing, and he's ready. The clip ended. Helena turned slowly. They perfected the model. Bishop was the field test. Cole is the product. Marcus's chest tightened. Where? She clicked open a metadata trace. Partial coordinates embedded in one of the frame headers. Not military. Private sector. Some kind of PMC logistics hub north of Santa Fe. It's remote. No visible operations on satellite. They're hiding him, Marcus muttered. Or worse, prepping deployment. He looked down at Bishop, who was now watching the screen, ears slightly back. When the video had played, he hadn't barked or growled. He had trembled. I think he knows him, Marcus said. Not just remembers. Knows him. Helena nodded slowly. Could be littermates. Or they trained together. Either way, he's part of this. Marcus stood. Then we're going. That's not a rescue mission, Marcus, Helena warned. That's a raid. I don't care what it is, he snapped. If they've got another dog like Bishop trained without limits, we either bring him back or put him down. Helena paused, then handed him a small injection case. Sedative. Fast-acting. Just in case. Marcus took it silently. They left at dusk. By the time the truck reached the northern edge of New Mexico, the air had changed. Thinner. Colder. Marcus had bypassed official routes, following old dirt roads from his deployment maps, routes that avoided cameras, tolls, eyes. The location was nestled inside a ravine. From the ridge above, they saw it. A low, concrete structure half buried in earth. 2 armed guards, no flags, no insignias, just efficiency and shadow. Too quiet, Marcus whispered. Beside him, Bishop lowered himself into the dirt, eyes locked on the entrance. Then, for the first time, he did something unexpected. He growled. But it wasn't his usual low warning. It was a mournful, broken sound. A sound of recognition. Helena adjusted the rifle scope. I think Cole's inside. They watched as a transport vehicle pulled into the compound. 2 handlers emerged with a cage between them. Inside, a Malinois stood perfectly still, eyes empty, posture frozen. When they opened the cage, the dog walked out on command, not even looking around. No sniffing. No reaction. God, Helena whispered. They erased everything. He's a ghost. But then, as the dog turned toward the fence, something happened. Bishop stood, and across the distance, the other dog froze. For a second, no more than a heartbeat, Cole's body hesitated. A twitch, a flicker in his tail. His ears tilted half an inch. Recognition. And then, a siren. The compound lit up. Someone had spotted them. Go, Marcus shouted, grabbing his pack. We're out of time. As bullets rang across the night, Bishop didn't run. He stood at the edge of the ridge, watching Cole disappear back into the darkness. And this time, there was no doubt in his eyes. Not fear. Not pain. But resolve. The plan had never been to go in. Not without backup. Not without recon. But plans changed when the enemy blinked first. Marcus gripped the edge of the cliff as spotlights swept across the compound below. The gunfire had stopped, but the alarms hadn't. Someone had seen the figures on the ridge, likely not clearly enough to identify, but enough to trigger full lockdown. Their one advantage, surprise, was gone. Beside him, Bishop crouched low, chest rising with tense breaths, but eyes sharp, focused. You still want this? Marcus whispered. Bishop turned toward him slowly. His answer wasn't a growl or bark, it was movement. Silent. Forward. Into the dark. Helena stayed behind on the ridge with the long-range rifle and comms. I've got overwatch, she said over the earpiece. I count 4 guards outside. 2 by the north gate, 2 moving along the perimeter. Chimeras facing west or down. Use the access tunnel. Marcus nodded and started moving. The tunnel she mentioned was visible on a thermal scan, a maintenance shaft that fed into the lower level of the facility. Most would miss it. It was buried under rock and partially collapsed, but Helena had seen the vent signature. Someone had been using it recently. The shaft was narrow, filled with stale air and bits of rusted piping. Bishop followed behind without hesitation, weaving through the space like it was muscle memory. At the end, a steel grate. Marcus popped it with a multi-tool and slid inside. They emerged behind a row of power inverters, industrial, loud, perfect cover. From here, the facility looked sterile and brutal. Concrete corridors, white light, no signs, no names, just a maze built to erase identity. Bishop paused, then moved left. He wasn't guessing. He knew the way. Marcus followed him through a security door that had been left slightly ajar. The lock was melted, overridden from the inside. Inside was a room colder than the rest. Literally. The temperature dropped 10 degrees and the lights were dimmer. Cages lined both walls, some open, some sealed. The air reeked of antiseptic and fear. In the last cage, a dog sat perfectly still. Cole. Bishop stopped just outside the bars. His posture shifted, not defensive, not aggressive, but conflicted. His ears pulled back slightly. Not in fear, but sorrow. Cole looked up and blinked. It was like watching a computer reboot. The light in his eyes flickered, then dulled. He didn't move, didn't react. But he saw. Marcus whispered, "He knows you." Then a voice cut through the intercom, calm, male, with a clipped military cadence. "Welcome back, Bishop." Marcus froze. "You brought him home. I didn't think you would, but you always were the loyal one." "Who is that?" Marcus hissed. Bishop turned slowly toward the far wall. Behind a pane of mirrored glass movement, a man stepped forward. Older, clean cut, wearing civilian tactical gear over a military undershirt. His badge read Dr. Calvin Voss. Helena's voice came through Marcus's earpiece. "Marcus, get out now. He's on every watch list I've ever pulled. Black site handler. Former DARPA liaison. Experimental trauma psychology." Voss smiled. "He doesn't know the whole story, does he?" Marcus raised his rifle. "Back off the glass. Did he tell you how many units we built off his neural patterns? How many dogs were broken because he wouldn't break?" Bishop let out a low, rumbling growl. "Oh, he remembers. Every test. Every scream. He was the perfect seed, the ideal survivor. Empathy fractured, loyalty intact. Until he failed. Until he tried to protect one of the others." Marcus stepped closer to the glass. "Open the cage." Voss tilted his head. "You think he's here to save Cole?" He pressed a button on a nearby tablet. "Cole isn't the target. You are." Suddenly, the door behind them hissed open. Another dog entered. This one larger, heavily scarred, eyes burning not with rage but with silence. A handler followed, masked, weapon ready. Cole didn't move. But Bishop did. He lunged. Not toward Voss. Toward the handler. Marcus barely had time to react. Shots rang out. Sparks flew. The larger dog attacked fast, trained, deadly, but Bishop met him mid-air, teeth and muscle colliding with thunderous force. "Get Cole," Helena shouted in Marcus's earpiece. "Get him now." Marcus ran to the cage, blew the lock with a charge he'd brought as backup. Cole stood, unmoving. His body twitched when the door opened, as if unsure what freedom even meant. Behind him, Bishop and the other dog rolled across the floor in a savage blur of growls, claws, and instinct. The handler shouted commands, but the larger dog no longer listened. He was fighting for something else now. Marcus grabbed Cole's collar. "Come on, soldier. Let's go." The dog hesitated, then stepped forward. Bishop slammed the other dog into the wall with a final, brutal twist and then turned, bleeding but standing. They ran. Out through the power hall. Through the tunnel. Gunfire erupted behind them. Sirens. Screams. Voss shouting into radios. But they made it out. All three. And as the facility disappeared into the night behind them, Marcus realized something chilling. Voss hadn't tried to kill them. He'd let them in. And he'd let them leave. Because whatever was coming had just begun. The ranch was no longer a safe house. It was a battlefield waiting to happen. Marcus knew at the moment they crossed the county line. The air had changed, no longer still, but humming with the invisible pressure of being watched. The men they escaped hadn't chased them directly, but Marcus had spent enough years in covert deployments to know, when your enemy doesn't shoot, it means he's preparing something worse. Cole lay silent in the back seat, his body rigid. He hadn't growled, whined, or responded to touch. He moved like a machine powered by command, not will. His breathing was shallow but steady, and his eyes, those cold, void eyes, never blinked unless forced. Bishop, though wounded, remained alert. He sat beside Marcus, head low but eyes always scanning. He hadn't made a sound since the fight. Not even when Helena stitched the gash on his shoulder inside the barn's infirmary. Not even when Marcus whispered, "You saved him." By nightfall, Helena had locked the property down. Security lights off. Communications routed through encrypted sat links. Drones on standby. Marcus double-checked every entry point while the two dogs rested side by side in the barn, one asleep, the other pretending. Then Helena found the drive. Taped beneath Cole's collar, embedded in the seam. It was slim, unmarked, military design. Marcus slid it into the secure terminal Helena had rigged in the kitchen. One file. Bishop_origin.wav. An audio file. Marcus hit play. And what came through the speaker stopped time. Begin conditioning log, subject B117. Handler Voss present. First stage, memory suppression with empathy retention override. Testing failed on prior units. B117 shows strong preservation instinct. Adapts rapidly. Imprints emotionally within 3 sessions. In field trials, he resisted direct orders when his bonded handler was threatened. This resistance, however, makes him replicable. Using his neural scan, we've developed 10 parallel units under designation Cole. He will not remember any of this, but his body will. The file cut off. Silence. Dense. Suffocating. Marcus couldn't breathe. Helena turned to him slowly. They didn't train Bishop to kill. He swallowed hard. They trained him to be the foundation. She nodded. Every unit they built was based on him. He was the template. The original. Bishop stood at the barn door, watching them through the glass. His eyes no longer burned with pain but with recognition, not just of the voice, but of the betrayal. The weight of it was almost visible in his posture, like gravity had found a way to punish the soul. Marcus stepped outside, sat on the porch steps. Bishop approached and laid down beside him. "You remember, don't you?" Marcus asked quietly. Bishop didn't move. But he didn't have to. You weren't just part of it. You were the first. You carried it all. Marcus placed a hand gently on Bishop's scarred neck. You weren't supposed to survive, but you did. A rustle came from inside the barn. Cole. He had risen from the floor, now standing at the entrance like a phantom, watching Bishop. Their eyes locked, two ghosts built from the same suffering. But where Bishop's eyes held pain and memory, Cole's remained empty. Then, slowly, something flickered. A shift. Cole stepped forward, one slow movement at a time, until he stood directly in front of Bishop. Bishop didn't growl. He stood, and nudged Cole gently with his snout. The gesture was small, tentative, but unmistakable. Connection. Marcus exhaled. He can reach him. But Helena's voice came through the porch radio, urgent. Marcus' movement on the ridge. 5 heat signatures, armed. They found us. Marcus stood. How long? Minutes, maybe less. He looked at the 2 dogs now standing side by side, one willing, one awakening. Then back at the barn, the house, the fences he'd spent years maintaining. He turned to Bishop. We run? Bishop looked to Cole. Then back to Marcus. And for the first time, The answer was clear in his eyes. No, they wouldn't run. Not this time. The wind rose with the first shot. It wasn't loud, suppressed, professional, but to Marcus, it sounded like a bell toll. From the ridge came shadows, 5 of them, moving in formation, rifles low, vision gear glowing faint green. Tactical, swift, quiet. Helena's voice snapped through the earpiece. They're coming in from the east, trying to flank the barn. Marcus stood in the open, rifle loaded, vest tight. He looked at Bishop and Cole, both already in position. Not ordered, not commanded. They just knew. They want him back, Helena said. Or dead. Maybe both. Marcus didn't answer. He stepped forward and opened the barn door fully, letting the cold wind sweep through. Cole hesitated for a breath, then moved to Marcus's side. Bishop took point. No more shadows. No more cages. Just one stand. The first enemy reached the southern fence, cutting silently through the wire. He never saw Bishop coming. A blur of tan muscle and trained precision. Bishop struck low, disarmed, and dropped him before the man could cry out. Cole followed, covering the flank. Inside the house, Helena locked eyes with Marcus through the scope mounted above the sink. I've got your back, she said. Whatever happens. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes, but every second felt eternal. The intruders were trained, fast, ruthless, but they hadn't accounted for the one thing no protocol could predict: loyalty. Bishop didn't fight like an attack dog, he fought like a soldier, moving to protect Marcus, to shield Cole. Every movement was deliberate, every strike restrained. Cole, once a ghost, moved with him, slower, less sure. But something inside had reignited. Every time Bishop lunged, Cole followed. Every time Bishop growled a warning, Cole backed him. Until the last man fell. Not dead, just broken. The field went still. Marcus scanned the ridge. Silence. He turned to Bishop, bleeding again, limping but standing. Then to Cole, body trembling, head low but eyes awake. They had won. But the cost came moments later. From the north. A black SUV. No insignia. Voss stepped out alone. No gun. No guards. Just that infuriating calm. I'm not here to fight, he said, hands raised. Marcus raised his rifle. One reason I don't drop you right now. Voss looked at Bishop. I came for him. Bishop snarled. Low, deep, cold. Voss stepped closer. He was never just a dog. He was a template. 1,000 soldiers built from one mind. Do you understand what that means? Marcus kept the barrel locked on Voss's chest. I understand he chose not to become you. Voss smiled. But can Cole? That's when Bishop moved. Not fast, not an attack. He stepped between Cole and Voss. And sat, blocking the line of sight, and looked at Marcus. A command. Marcus understood. He lowered his weapon slowly. Then, a gunshot. But not from Voss. From Cole. A handler, half conscious from the earlier fight, had raised his sidearm. The bullet hit Bishop in the side. He staggered but didn't fall. Marcus screamed. No. Cole turned instantly, eyes wide, breath ragged, and lunged. Not at Bishop. At the man who fired. It was over in seconds. And when it was done, Cole crawled to Bishop, whimpering, pressing his head against his brother's neck. Marcus dropped to his knees. Helena ran from the house, bloodied but alive. They tried everything. But Bishop's breathing slowed, then stopped. No sound. Just the wind. Later, under the pale light of dawn, Marcus buried Bishop beneath the oak tree behind the barn. Helena made a small plaque from salvaged metal. Bishop, the one who remembered. Cole sat beside the grave for hours. And when he finally stood, something had changed. He was no longer the ghost they had rescued. He was the echo Bishop left behind. Weeks passed. Then months. The story spread first among veterans, then across the military community. Quietly, off record. But it grew. Marcus refused interviews. But he and Helena did something else. They rebuilt the barn, turned it into a center. A place where dogs like Bishop, those left behind, betrayed, discarded, could heal. They called it the Bishop Center. And on a hill overlooking the valley, under the oak tree, stood a plaque. Children came there now. Veterans, families, survivors. And beside them, always Cole. Older, quieter, but watching. Protecting. And remembering. Why? Because even after the silence returns, some dogs never stop guarding the light. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful story of loyalty, sacrifice, and redemption. If Bishop's journey moved you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that honor the silent heroes among us. Don't forget to leave a comment, share your thoughts, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. We're grateful to have you here. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and remember, some heroes have 4 legs and endless courage.